There we go. All right. So again, welcome everyone to our last part of this three-part series webinars on strategies for parents to navigate challenging behaviors. So if you were here in webinar number 1, we spoke about the functions of behavior. So the why, the reason why some children or children in general engage in some of these problematic behaviors. And then our webinar 2, we spoke a little bit more about consequences. So how to implement some consequences. And today we're going to talk about replacement behaviors. And we're going to use this term that's called the fair pair rule. There's a little typo here. It's not pair, it's fair pair rule. But anyways, the content is what's important, right? Not the typo. But anyways, welcome everyone. I'm glad you guys are here. It's a small group. I get it. A lot of things are going on. Summer being one of them. But as always, I will record this and I will also send it probably this week. I will email it to everyone who is signed up to the link so that you have a copy of it. You can share with others and no one misses out on the information. So as always, everyone, please be very respectful of everyone's opinion. I do encourage active communication, active questions. Of course, I am limited in what I can recommend or what I can suggest because of ethical reasons, but I will try my best to answer all of your questions. So I'm going to try to make this as interactive and as fun as possible. I know it's a little late. But for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Monica Gilbert. I am a clinical psychologist in Florida, a licensed clinical psychologist in Florida, and I'm also board certified behavior analyst. And a little bit about what I do, a little bit about the private practices that I run. So we have Crystal Minds New Beginning, which is where we do ABA therapy for children diagnosed with autism, ADHD, other diagnoses. Then we have Crystal Mind Psychological Services, which is like the sister company. Here we do more of the mental health psychological treatment. And we also host different groups. And we have vocational training for adults in the spectrum and with other disorders as well. And then I also do parent coaching and school consultations on how to use motivational interviewing for better communication. So that's basically everything that I do. If you guys have any questions on any of this, you can let me know. You can send me a message, a private message, or an email. All right, so let's get started. You have your chat. You can type anything you want to type in your chat. Before we get started, so where is everyone from? Is everyone from Miami? Do we have some people from Broward, Dade, out of Florida? The other day, I think I had someone from like London or something. And I'm like, wow, someone from London. So where are you guys from? Put it in the chat, just to make sure that you are able to use the chat as well. Sometimes these things don't work. Okay, I see Broward. Where else? Where else are we coming from? Broward, Miramar. Oh, I'm in Miramar too. How about the rest of you? Anyone from Miami? Do we have any Miamians here? Okay, Broward. All right, so mostly Broward. Well, I was raised in Miami, but you know, I live in Broward and I love Broward. All right, so let's get started. So for those of you who were here in our last webinars, we spoke about the ABC, and we're gonna kind of review some of these terms because it's kind of like one of those things where if you don't use it, you lose it. So who remembers what the ABC stands for? Or what do you think it stands for, ABC? We're not just teaching kids how to start their ABCs. Like, what does the ABC stand for? Let's see if anyone can remember what the A stands for in ABC. No, no takers? So A is for antecedent, B is for behavior, and C is for consequence. So what is this ABC contingency? What is it for? So this is a way where we can analyze different behaviors and be able to find out what happened prior to the behavior, which is what we call the antecedent, what the behavior looks like, and then the consequence, which is directly what happens after the behavior, okay? So that's why it's so important to just have these kind of core concepts before we get to the good stuff. So here we have a typical example. I've explained it before in the previous webinars. So A is the antecedent. So here we see a child who's given a plate of veggies. And then we have B, which is the actual behavior. So the child starts crying. And then C is the consequence. The plate of veggies gets removed. So what do you think the child is going to do next time that you give him something he doesn't want to eat? Well, he's probably going to cry because that behavior has gotten him out of things that he doesn't want to do in the past, right? So once he cries, the plate of veggies is removed. He's more likely to cry in the future. So the plate of veggies continues to be removed. So that's what the ABC stands for. All right, so the other thing that we also spoke about were the functions of behavior. So the functions are the reason why we all engage in the behaviors that we engage in. So sometimes we engage in behaviors in order to ask, to get objects, to get tangibles, to get attention, to get activities. And sometimes we're just doing it to kind of delay. You know, like sometimes, I don't know if it happens to you guys, but you're procrastinating. Like, you know, you have to do something, but you're just delaying it, right? Like you're waiting until the last minute, and then the last minute you're rushing and you get it done. And guess what? That reinforces your behavior. You know, you can wait till last minute and you'll get it done, even if you're stressed. So it happens to all of us. We tend to engage in behaviors in order to evade or delay things that are a little aversive to us. There are 4 functions in behavior analysis. So 4 reasons why we all engage in the behaviors we do and why your kids engage in the behaviors that they do. So sometimes they do it to get it tangible. A clear example of this is, remember Toys R Us? I always think about this example when you have the parent and they're like in their little cart and they're going through all the games. And then all of a sudden the kid or the child sees a game they want. And what does a child do? He starts crying. The mom says, no, you can't have this. They start crying. Eventually the mom gives in. So he stops crying and gives him the toy, right? So this child's behavior of crying is probably being done to get the tangible. So we can say that the function of that behavior is tangible. All right, so the next behavior is escape, or the next function is escape. So again, escape is when a child engages in a behavior in order to escape, get away from something they don't want to do. We see this a lot with homework. When I've been working with teachers in the classroom, for example, we'll see a lot of kids engage in these problematic behaviors. By the way, at the end of this presentation, I have like 2 videos for you guys so you can see it in action. But we see this a lot in the classrooms when we go and consult with the teachers. So the child is given something to do, a classwork assignment, and he starts crying, he starts throwing things. And then, you know, usually they get sent to the principal's office. So when they get sent to the principal's office, guess what? They were able to escape that aversive thing that they didn't want to do. So it reinforced their behavior. So we can say that that behavior has the function of escape. Sensory is something that happens outside of our bodies, right? So we see this a lot with fidgeting. There's a lot of us who fidget, we bite our nails, we twirl our hairs. So children do the same thing, right? So we can say that those behaviors are maintained for sensory reasons. And then attention is the obvious one. Something that I do want to add with attention is that attention is not only positive attention, but also reprimands. Some kiddos just like the reprimands as well, right? All that are different forms of attention, even eye contact. So when we look at the functions and the antecedent and the consequences, usually when the function is sensory, so when a child is doing something for sensory reasons, the antecedent, so what happens prior to that behavior, is that the stimulation is either too high or too low. So we see some kiddos sometimes when there's a lot of noises in the environment where they're like this, right? They're shutting their ears. So we can say that the stimulation is too high in their environment. So the behavior is, you know, shutting their ears, and that regulates or changes that stimulation. That's the consequence of that behavior. That's why it keeps happening. For escape, usually the child is presented with a demand or a situation that they don't like go take a shower, eat your veggies, go do your homework, whatever it is. They don't like it, they start engaging in whatever behavior they want to engage in. And the consequence of that is that usually the demands are reduced, they're delayed. I've also seen like in some circumstances where people are like, okay, I see that you're acting up, so I'm not going to present this task anymore, right? I'll allow you to take a breather. And I'm like, no, you're reinforcing that behavior. But anyways, when we look at attention, usually attention is either withdrawn or directed elsewhere. So this can be like parents, for example, that this happened to me like this afternoon where I was speaking, my kids were perfectly well. They were playing, doing their own thing. And then I turn around, I start speaking with my husband, and all of a sudden they start, throwing things and yelling because the attention now is diverted elsewhere. And then the consequence of that is that they gain attention. So usually someone says, stop, shouting or stop doing that. So they're getting basically what they want in some way. And then tangible, an item or an activity is withheld and the child engages in the behavior and then they're able to get that item back. So this is how the functions of behavior play a role in the ABCs. Questions about this? You guys can always write questions here and I will get to them as I see them. All right, so as I mentioned, we spoke about the antecedents, we spoke about the consequences. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about antecedent intervention. So what are things that you can do to prevent these behaviors from occurring if you already know the function? So if you already know that the child is engaging in a behavior to get your attention, or they're doing it to escape a task, or they're doing it, for whatever reason, what can you do prior to that behavior occurring to either soften that behavior or make sure that it doesn't happen? So let's take a look at the functions, so the reasons why they engage in these behaviors, and then some proactive strategies. So that's what we call them, proactive strategies. So first, if the function is attention, that means that the child is engaging in this behavior to get your attention or to get someone's attention. Proactive strategies that you can do, so things you can do before they start that behavior, is increasing the amount of non-contingent attention. You can even use a timer. So if you know, for example, that this happens a lot in a restaurant. You're in a restaurant and the child's going to want your attention, and I don't know, you're out with friends or something, then every so often, every 5 minutes, you'll look at the child and provide them with attention. The more non-contingent or like random attention they get, the less likely they are to engage in a behavior to get your attention because they're already getting it. Letting the person know when attention is available. So letting them know, look, I'm not going to be able to speak to you right now because I have an important call. Once I'm done, I'll come back to speak with you. Providing independent activities when busy and prompting to request attention appropriately. So I'm going to be on the phone, but if you want my attention, you can tap me and then I'll look at you for a bit and I'll see, what's going on. So teaching them the appropriate way of getting your attention. Now, if the function of the behavior is tangible, so they want an activity, some proactive strategies, so some things you can do prior to that behavior is you can clarify what items and activities are available. For example, when you go to the store, you can buy this thing, but you can't buy this, or today we're not going to buy anything. Removing off-limit items from surroundings, offering alternatives to items or activities that are denied. So something interesting about this, the offering alternatives, because I see this happen all the time. This works if you do it prior to the behavior, not after. What do I mean by that? So if your child wants to watch TV and you tell your child, no, you cannot watch TV, and then your child starts crying, they start tantruming, and then you tell them, okay, you can't watch TV, but you know what, I can give you the iPad or I can give you the phone. Okay, that's not what we want. So we don't want that to happen, because what you just did is that you just reinforced the crying behavior. So instead of doing that, you want to anticipate when these behaviors are going to occur. So if you know that you tell them no for the TV, for example, they're going to have a behavior, then, or a problematic behavior, then what you want to tell them is offer that that alternative beforehand. So you cannot watch the iPad or you cannot watch the TV. However, you can watch the iPad or you can watch, your phone. So try to offer that alternative beforehand and not after, so you don't reinforce the behavior. Another proactive strategy is prompting to request or negotiate alternatives, which we spoke about. Now, when we look at the escape and avoidance, so when a child engages in a behavior in order to escape or avoid that thing that they don't want to do, whether it's taking a shower, doing their homework, whatever it is, some proactive strategies that you want to do is modify characteristics of the setting or activities. Allow opportunities to choose what and when. Something that I do with my kiddos, for example, is that I will, make like a list and say, okay, you have math, you have reading, you have this, you have that. Which one do you want to do first? So you're giving them the option to choose one or the other, but at the end of the day, they're going to do both. They're going to do them all, right? You're just allowing them to choose which one, so it makes it less likely that they'll engage in behaviors in order to escape. Also reminding them of how to request a break. If you need a break, tell me you want 5 minutes, right? Something that I've seen a lot is sometimes kids, they tell you, oh my gosh, I feel so sick and I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to do this activity because I feel sick. And then if you see it overused, well, first of all, you should take your child to the doctor if you see that they're overusing this. But if you start to suspect that perhaps it isn't true and it's more in order to escape an activity, then, this is something where you may want to prompt them and say, hey, if you don't want to do this activity, if you don't want to go to this place, tell me, use your words. I'd rather the child get what they need, get to escape a situation or whatever it is by using their words instead of, like engaging in these behaviors that can become problematic in the future. Sensory stimulation, so providing other more appropriate sensory stimulations, blocking access to inappropriate sensory stimulation. And we're only really doing this if the sensory stimulation causes pain to self or to others. So I do want to kind of give that caveat right there. All right, so let's talk about the behavior part. So we spoke about consequence-based strategies in our second part series, and today we spoke about antecedent-based strategies, right? So things that you can do to prevent certain behaviors from occurring. Now we're going to talk about replacement behaviors. So we're going to talk about the B. Questions. What questions do you guys have for me? I know that I'm just speaking 100 miles per hour or per minute as I usually do, but what questions do you have for me? I just saw your message, Diana. That's fine. Thank you for being here. It's going to be recorded. So I record these webinars and we're going to send them via email for those of you who aren't able to make it. So questions, anyone? It can be questions about functions. You can give me a scenario. We can kind of dissect it here and talk about it. Okay, so let's move on to replacement behaviors. So this is where the fair pair rule comes in, and different people have different definitions of what the fair pair rule is. So this is one of the many definitions. So the fair pair rule states that when targeting a behavior for decrease, so when you want a behavior to go away or, to lessen, we must teach a behavior to replace it based on its function and reinforcer, right? So in other words, we don't want to leave the child with nothing. We're not just trying to alleviate or decrease a problematic behavior and not teach them the appropriate behavior to get their needs met, right? Because again, they're doing it for a reason. When we go back to the 4 functions of behaviors, if the child is engaging in a certain behavior to get attention, it's because the child needs that attention. So again, it's not like we're just going to consecrate that behavior and say, okay, that's it, we're going to do this so you don't get our attention. But you also want to teach the child the appropriate way to get attention because they still need it. And if it's, for example, escape, so if a child doesn't want to deal with the homework or that situation, we're going to apply, either antecedent or consequence-based interventions, but we also want them to be able to escape those situations appropriately. We know that there are different circumstances in our life where kids have to know how to say, hey, I don't want to do this, or, I don't want to get into that car, or I don't want to do this activity. I mean, they need to feel like they are able to escape appropriately by using their words. The same thing with sensory and also tangible, right? Okay, I have a question here. I have a teacher who will retire if my client returns to her classroom in August. What's a good replacement behavior for her? That's interesting. So the behavior, can you tell me a little bit more about it so I understand the situation, because I'm not completely clear. So a good replacement behavior for the client or a good replacement behavior for the teacher? So tell me a little bit more about that. And you can also unmute yourself if it's easier. We're a pretty small group, so we can do that. All right, so again, the fair pair rule basically says that for whatever behavior we want to decrease, we should also try to increase one that replaces it. Okay, so when we look at the fair and the pair, let's look at the fair first. So function, again, if we don't know why the child's engaging in the behavior, if we don't know the purpose of the behavior, then we cannot come up with a good enough intervention for it. So the purpose of the behavior guides the intervention. Antecedent, so events that happen before the behavior need to be analyzed in order to identify the triggers. Interaction, so we have to see the social and environmental influences of the behavior. And then lastly, response. So behavior has to be objectively observed and monitored. When we look at the pair portion is positive. So reinforcement is used to increase desired behaviors. Appropriate, so an emphasis is on teaching socially acceptable behaviors. So again, it's not that we just want behaviors that are socially, acceptable, but we want our kids to engage in behaviors that others are going to recognize, that others are going to understand, and therefore reinforce. Immediate, whenever you do apply a reinforcement or whatever consequence it is, it has to be delivered promptly. It has to be delivered quickly. And yes, and consequences are provided to strengthen desired behavior. So these are some parts of the fair pair rule as well. All right, so let's look at this scenario of Stephen. So when we look at the setting event, Stephen didn't sleep well last night. So I totally get that. When you don't sleep well, your world is completely upside down. So we call these things setting events. So these are things that happen before, way before the behavior. So even before the antecedent that can kind of like provoke behaviors to occur, right? So the setting event is that Stephen didn't have a good night's sleep. Now, the triggering antecedent, so what happens prior to his behavior, is that another student teases Stephen and calls him names in class. If you look at the part next to it, it says the prompt behavior, Stephen screams at the student and strikes the peer. So he basically screams and hits the other child. The consequence is that student stops teasing and Stephen escapes the situation while in timeout, right? So we're thinking that the teacher put him in timeout, and obviously because he hit the kid stopped teasing him. So this is a natural consequence that just occurs. And as we spoke about it in our previous webinars, consequences are not bad or good. They just are, right? When we say consequences, is because they just occur after the behavior. So when we look at this box on top, the desired behavior, when Stephen is triggered by this child because the child is teasing him, we probably want him to ignore or tolerate the teasing, right? I hear that a lot. Parents, teachers tell, the children, well, just ignore him, just let it be. And usually when that happens, right, it can become worse. But that's usually what we want, what we strive for them to be able to ignore and just walk away. Because we all know that in life, you have to, ignore some people. You can't fight every single battle. So realistically, this desired behavior may not happen because of different reasons, right? So we have to look for a replacement behavior. So again, the problematic behavior is Stephen screaming and striking or hitting the other child. And it seems like he's doing it to escape, right? That is the function. He's doing it to escape the teasing of this other child. So what can Stephen do instead in order to escape this child that is not a problematic behavior? So what do you guys think, for those of you who are actively listening here? What can he do instead of striking? What can a replacement behavior for this be? Okay, someone wrote something. Let me see. Okay, so a possible replacement behavior that we can prompt or we can teach Stephen to engage in is for him to tell the peer, hey, leave me alone, or get away from me, or, whatever, something like that, right? So using communication, using his words in order for him to get his function met. So once he does that, hopefully the peer leaves him alone. And now he's learned that next time that I want him to leave me alone, I have to use my words rather than I have to use my screams and my fists. Okay, so that's what we want to accomplish. So here, Stephen asks the student to stop, leaves the area, or goes to get help. Let's look at this second scenario. So Lisa has no friends and limited opportunity for social interaction. So this is a setting event. Now, the antecedent is that the teacher withdraws from Lisa to attend to other students. So Lisa is a girl who doesn't have a lot of friends and doesn't have a lot of social interactions. And then the teacher just, starts attending to other children. She starts speaking to other children. So the problematic behavior that Lisa engages in is that she makes noises and fiddles with materials. And then the natural consequence of that is that the teacher scolds Lisa for disrupting the classroom and moves her seat closer to her, right? So again, we could probably say that the function of Lisa's behavior is attention. She's doing it to get attention, and it's exactly what she got from the teacher. Not only did the teacher scold her, which again, a reprimand is still a form of attention, but she also moved her closer to her seat, right? So Lisa just learned that this is the behavior that she has to engage in order to get attention. Now, what we want, or the desired behavior, would be for Lisa to probably learn how to make friends and socialize with other children so she won't need this attention from the teacher, right? And this would lead also to her getting that typical attention. And that is, again, the desired behavior, what we're aiming for. However, in this scenario, what we want to prompt is a replacement behavior. So instead of her making noises and fiddling with materials, in order to get the attention from the teacher, what else can she do? And for those of you who are going to watch this video after, I do this like little pause so you can really think about it. So what would be a replacement behavior that she can engage in that will get her that attention that she needs from the teacher, and that is appropriate, of course? Okay, I see here, participate and socialize. Okay, good. What else? What can she do that can get her attention that is not, disrupting the class? And we want to come back to the function, which is attention. We want her to get attention, but in a more appropriate manner. Okay, yes, it is attention. Okay, so a replacement behavior that we would want her to engage in is, no problem, Diana. Thank you for coming. All right, so replacement behavior that we want her to probably engage in is to ask the teacher, right? Say, hey, can I help you with something? Or can I speak with you for a bit, or whatever it is, right? So using her words in order to get that attention. And it's not necessarily that using your words has to be your only form of communication. You can also tap, you can also sign, you can also show a picture card, whatever is functional to that individual, whatever is their source of communication, they can use it in order to get that attention in an appropriate way. I used to work a lot with foster kids. And some of the times, I remember this specific kiddo, he really liked attention, but he engaged in all these problematic behaviors in order to get attention. And he would get attention because the teachers would reprimand him, his foster mom would reprimand him. And he really, really loved attention. So I said, you know what? Next time we go to the school, because I was seeing him in the school, we're going to start doing things in order for you to get attention, but in a more appropriate way. So I had him like hold the doors, for the girls and the teachers to go inside. And of course, everyone was like, oh my gosh, thank you. This is super nice of you. I would have him collect like things that people were leaving all over the school. And then he would take it to the lost and found, which, of course, I also, spoke with the staff in the front to reinforce him when he did that. So he started engaging in all these behaviors in order to get attention. And automatically, when he started doing all these replacement behaviors, automatically the problematic behaviors that he was engaging in to get attention, they decrease, right? So that's the beauty of this fair pair rule. All right, so before I show you this video, let me look at my chat because I have a question here. My client has extreme maladaptive behaviors through his learning day. I believe as well as a district that he should be in a special setting. The parents with assistance from a lawyer have put him in general ed. What is a good replacement behavior for the teacher to aid her with the ability to manage her anger when my client is in her classroom? Okay. So, this sounds like a very tough situation. I think, again, I cannot give you a direct advice, and it sounds like it's a little bit more than just a child's problematic behavior. It's probably like, what does the teacher do to kind of deal with this situation? I think, communication is key, perhaps speaking with others. I mean, we're getting a little bit of off topic, but I think, that seeking ways to kind of like manage anger, because we don't want a teacher to be angry, because I don't think she's going to be, her entire self in that scenario. So that's really, I'm sorry, but that's really like the depth into what I can go into. But if you want, you can send me a message after, and, we can discuss this a little bit more to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. All right. So let's watch these videos. And this is a video I actually recorded today, and I did it for you guys just for this webinar. So it's a short video, and you're going to see an interaction, and then we'll discuss it. Ow! What? Remember, I'm going to be reading, so if you need to call me, you have to tap me and say mom, okay? Yes? Sure, give me 1 minute and I'll be right there, okay? All right. So you see the dramatic kind of like clapping at the end. So as you could see here, my son came to me and he was like, mama, mama, he even pulled my hair. So he engaged in this problematic behavior in order to what? To get my attention. So we can say that the function of that behavior is attention. So he was trying to get my attention. And when I looked at him and I said, what? Guess what? I actually gave him that attention. So I reinforced that behavior. So then I tell you no, and then I say, okay, this is the correct way of doing it. So in the next slide, you see when I provide a proactive strategy. So I tell him, you have to tap me and say like this if you want my attention. So that in the next scenario, you see him doing it, and then you see me reinforcing that replacement behavior. So he's getting attention, but with a more appropriate behavior that he's engaging in. So now he learns, hey, I have to do this to get her and others' attention. All right, let's watch this other video. And again, oh, same one. So this is actually my staff. I asked them to please put a video together for me for today's webinar. So you'll see this video, and I'm not even going to say anything else, so you can take a look at it.
Jennifer, is that homework? No. What do you mean, no? That's homework. After homework, Jennifer? No. What do you mean, no? 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, and then we have to do homework. Okay, thank you.
She has a big sign that says homework. Okay, so what you were able to see here is that the mom comes in and she says, hey, Jennifer, time for homework. Jennifer actually responds appropriately. She says no. And which a lot of you are like, what do you mean appropriately, right? They have to do their homework, but you know what I mean? Like not with a like super bad behavior. So she says no, and then the mom says, oh, homework. And then she has this huge tantrum. And at that point, the mom leaves, right? So the mom didn't leave when she said no. The mom left and allowed her to essentially escape when she had that huge tantrum. So what did she learn? She learned that by saying no, she's not going to be able to escape from that situation. She has to throw a huge tantrum, and that's actually going to work for her. So that is what she, Jennifer, learned from this situation. Now, in the second part, mom comes in, she says no, and then she says, what do you mean no? And then she says, can I have 5 more minutes? And then mom leaves, right? So again, we are reinforcing that replacement behavior. We're reinforcing that appropriate behavior with the same function that the child's engaging in the behavior for. So that's what we want to see. And a lot of people are like, well, the child has to do their homework anyways. Absolutely. But you don't know how many times I've seen parents allow the child to escape the homework or whatever it is when they go into like the most intense behavior in order to, and instead of allowing them to escape it when they simply say no, or when they use their words, which is what we want, right? So in essence, if you're going to allow your child to escape something that they don't want to do with a more intense behavior, I'd rather you just allow them to escape by them saying no, because at least they learn, okay, this is the way that you speak, this is the way that you communicate, and you get your needs met. All right, so we are already at the end of our webinar today. This was a very short webinar, but I'll leave it up for questions. I'll stick around for about 3 more minutes. If you guys have any questions, any comments, anything you want to add, I will be here for the last 3 minutes. You can ask me specific scenarios. You can type it, or you can also unmute yourselves. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you. So if you guys have no other questions, then I will let you get on with your night. And remember, we do this every month. We do this once a month. So next webinar, I'm sure that you will find a lot of value. And I'll let you know what the title is in either the email threads or in the social media. Bye, everyone. Have a good night. Some people are leaving, some are joining. Hi.
Hi.